Well, bullets flying apart in midair, bullets destabilizing after they've gone downrange, bullets becoming more stable after they've gone 200 yards downrange. What is going on with bullets, twist rates, stability, and all the rest of it? People have questions. We're going to try to provide some answers on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Hey guys, I just saw my knife. I wanted to say something about this. This is, of course, me a Ron Spomer knife, the one that has my little logo on it. The classic Hunter from Knives of Alaska. I've talked about it a lot. Still love this knife. Took it along to Africa. Obviously, I wanted to use it on some African animals. I could have just as soon left it home. Here's the deal. They don't want you skinning and cutting up your own animals in Africa because this is employment for the locals. The trackers and the skinners and all these guys, this is their job, and you insult them if you come in with your knife and start to do their job. So I will put on my best smiley face and ask for permission to just try it out a little bit, and they will humor me and let me do that. But you can just kind of read the body language that they just as soon that you go mind your own business and let them do the skinning. So I will show them my knife, and I'll do a little bit of skinning just to say, yeah, I once worked on an African buffalo or a kudu or whatever. But then I have to turn it over to them. But when I let them use my knife, oh, they do love it. They love the heft and the shape and the sharpness. They really like a sharp knife. They're not used to it. In my experience, they just have dull knives over there, and they don't seem to have, I don't know if it's the equipment to sharpen them and keep them sharp or not. A few places will, but most are just kind of get by with more pressure and less sharpness. So when they get a hold of something like this, I have to show them that it's extremely sharp and they have to be careful. And then they really enjoy it. So I guess the point is, don't get too worried about not having your best knife along in Africa, because the chances are you won't get to use it very much. At least I didn't. Hello, everybody. Say, you know what? For all the people who chew me out, for all the things that I get wrong, I have to take a little bit of solace in seeing people complain about answers that I've gotten from the gunsmiths at Midwest Gunworks. I mean, people will ask me questions, and if I'm a little bit unsure, I will ask the gunsmiths at Midwest Gunworks about it. They will give me the answer, and people still don't want to believe it. So it's just a crazy world out there. But listen, everybody, I, as well as the good guys at Midwest Gunworks, try to provide you with honest, straightforward answers based on our experiences. And that's why I always say I don't know everything. And many of you do know things that I don't. But I trust the gunsmiths. Surely there are gunsmiths who get things wrong from time to time. They're human as well. But I think we all stick together on this. You're more than welcome to question things and say, why? I don't understand. But when I come up with my answers and then I get confirmed from the good gunsmiths at Midwest Gunworks, I'm tending to just think that's probably pretty accurate. But nevertheless, I'm sure we are going to get complaints about what we cover in this show, as we do in every show. So let's just dive in and see what we come up with. Now, first I want to talk about something here from one of our patrons, Lewis. He has some questions about some stability issues. And I want to mention before we get into it that we are really starting to put a lot of emphasis on Patreon. Betsy and I find that we've get really personal relationships with all of our patrons. These are just really great folks who are willing to help support our programming, providing us with a little monthly stipend, shall we say. And it's been so much fun with these guys, especially in our monthly meetups, that we have decided to start producing more content. So we would really urge any of all of you who really appreciate what we do here on all of our channels as well as our website to join us on Patreon. That really helps us concentrate on you, your questions, and helping you all out. So give it a look. Go to patreon.com and then ask for Ron Spomer Outdoors. It'll take you there, and then you can sign up and help us out, and we'll get a little more familiar with you all, and you can join us on both our podcasts and our extra content that we'll be providing, and maybe even book a hunt with us someday, share a little trip somewhere fun and exciting like Africa. Now, let's see what Lewis, our patron, has to say. Ron, I think I know what that guy in the last part of your most recent video was confused about. He was most likely using a stability calculator online. Well, he input his data, and then he input various velocities into that, and he wanted to match the speed that his gun was shooting at various distances. It probably goes below the velocity threshold of being stable on that calculator, somewhere between 200 and 400 yards. But this doesn't matter, of course, because the muzzle velocity is all that matters for stability in this calculator. Once you get the bullet up to a certain speed inside of a barrel, which forces it to spin once every certain amount of inches, whatever this twist rate is, well, that gives you the RPMs of that bullet. And if it has enough RPMs to be stable, it will remain stable at least to the point that the bullet crosses the transonic barrier. That's where the velocity drops below about 1,100 feet per second. Past that, it may or may not remain stable. So, continuing, he says, depending on the ogive design and the twist rate that bullet has, it's often recommended to go 1 to 2 inches faster in your twist than really necessary to remain stable through that transonic barrier. It remains stable for that long because there really isn't much of a force acting on the bullet to slow its spin. It's just its forward motion. So it's kind of like throwing a football. The spin rate of the ball continues for many seconds in the air before it slows down much. Since our bullets at hunting ranges or even long-distance hunting ranges are only in the air for less than a second, there really isn't enough time for the RPMs to drop enough to affect stability. You most likely knew most of this, but I thought I would cover it for you, and the guy got confused here, with common knowledge being that velocity affects stability. Without qualifying it, muzzle velocity is what affects stability. So have a good one, Ron. Lewis. Now, Lewis, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think what you're right, this gentleman did was he looked at that calculator and it said, what is your bullet's velocity and what is the spin rate and all this stuff, and that calculator calculates it based on muzzle velocity. And I think he was, as you suggest, inputting the velocity at different distances and thinking that he then lost that. No, the RPMs, the revolutions per minute of your bullet, remain extremely high. And by extremely high, I mean some bullets will leave going 200,000 revolutions per minute. Some will stabilize as high as 300,000 or slightly more. So there's a lot of spin going on here, and it does not degrade very much, if at all. So your bullets, if they start off stable, will remain stable way out past reasonable hunting distances and even unreasonable hunting distances. All right, let's hear from another patron. This is Justin. He says, I'm proud to say that I'm a leftist. Oh, this is in response to a short thing we did with Griffin, who edits these. And he's a left-handed shooter, so he was making some little jokes about being a leftist and being ignored in the gun world. And, of course, that brings up all kinds of political connotations and such. So we were having some fun with it, and I think Justin's going to do the same right here. He says, Griffin, I'm proud to say that I'm also a leftist in this right-wing world. I've spent my whole life shooting right-handed guns left-handed because I basically had to. There are a lot more lefties on the market these days, but the selection is still way too short. Like Griffin, I am forever to build custom rifles just to get what I need. Bergara has been the first to offer a fairly wide selection of barreled left-handed actions, but we desperately need more. So, leftists unite! Spread the word! Ooh, spread the word! Oh, boy. Oh, hey, there's some more from Justin. What does he add here? I was honestly good with shooting right-handed guns left-handed until I got into PRS rimfire shooting competition. This really opened my eyes to the necessity of shooting a left-handed rifle. My ability to stay on target, stay stable, and get that quick, accurate follow-up shot has increased dramatically now that I'm running left-handed guns. Yeah, that's something to consider. I know some lefty shooters who are really adept at running a bolt-action rifle right-handed, but they have to reach up and over the top of the scope to run the action, and they can do it remarkably quickly. And the most famous shooter who I've seen do this is Craig Boddington. He and I were at a little seminar where they announced the Blaser R8 rifle, which is a straight pull. Well, that makes it a lot easier because you just reach over the top and pull straight back. You don't have to lift the handle and drop it again. And we had a little speed shooting competition, and I beat Craig by, I don't remember what it was, a second or less. I think it was about a second. That was for, I think, 5 shots. So he was really running that thing quickly as a left-hander with a right-handed rifle. So it can be done. But if you really want to be competitive, you probably are going to be much better by having the rifle designed for the side on which you shoot. All right, now Tate did a video review of a Burris scope, and he got lots of grief on this thing and lots of people asking questions about it. This is one of those modern high-tech scopes that has all kinds of digital data inside of it to help you precisely put your reticle on target at different distances. I don't remember all the different features of it, but it's one of the most innovative on the market today, really high tech, and in some states this is illegal. So we got a lot of stuff, comments, questions from people about this whole affair. Let's just see what we're dealing with here. This is Poor Fat Man. Poor Fat Man says, the states that do not allow this scope are evil states. They should care more about clean, ethical kills more than anything else for the animals. I think what Poor Fat Man here is saying is that he has heard that some states do not allow you to use electronic scopes like this for hunting. And he thinks that's kind of silly because such a scope would enhance your chances for making a clean kill. And he has a point there, but other people are going to weigh in on this, and we're going to weigh in on it ourselves here in a little bit. So let's just tie it all together first. So our next one is Lee, who says, I find it ironic that Burris, who makes these scopes in Colorado, well, Colorado has made those scopes illegal. So if the scope has a computer chip in it, it's considered a smart rifle. And that's true. And now we hear from, oh, God has got a gun? What? Oh, God, he's got a gun. What a name. Kind of a beginner here, but why would this scope be banned or illegal? Is this one of those unfair advantage things in hunting? I thought you were limited to what and how many animals you take. So what's the point in pretending that the playing field is level? Here in Canada, there is a rule about hunting ducks. You can have only 3 shots in a shotgun, despite the gun holding perhaps 5. So what is the point of such petty rules? In competition, I understand, but what if you're like me and you don't care what the other guys are shooting at or why? You just shoot targets because you like it? So as long as it's done safely, why ban a scope? Isn't accuracy the goal? Why not ban all scopes with more than, say, 15 power zoom? You see what I'm getting at here? Yeah. Oh, God, he's got a gun. I do see what you're getting at there. And, let me address a little bit of it right now. One thing I want to jump to is the duck thing. It's kind of off the scope issue, but it does point to some regulations that people sometimes don't understand. That one is because when these regulations were put into effect, pump-action shotguns with long magazines that could hold 5 or 6 shots, those were coming into vogue, and they made it a lot easier to kill a lot of ducks. And these were market hunting days, so they were really efficient at just killing ducks to sell on the market, and of course that led to a severe decline in populations. So they said, how can we limit their effectiveness? They were trying to limit their ability to easily take ducks. And when we got away from market hunting and put the emphasis on sport hunting, which means there are rules and regulations to tame things down, it was kind of deemed important to limit how many shots you could get off at a flock of ducks or geese to minimize wounding loss. So let's say you have a limit of 5 ducks a day or 3 or 10 or whatever it was or is, and you have a gun that can hold 5 rounds and you go bang, 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 you might kill 3 ducks cleanly and then cripple or wound a couple because you're tempted to use those last 2 shots when the ducks are getting a little too far out to be taken out cleanly. So they were trying to eliminate the waste from any kind of wounding loss by limiting how many shots. So what that basically does is it forces you to wait for the perfect shot opportunity, decoy those ducks in closely so that you're going to make a good clean shot for 1 or 2, save that last round for finishing one off if you have to. And doesn't take long and you've got your limit anyway. It's no longer market hunting for volume. You're trying to enjoy the experience of being a good hunter. Ties it all together with sportsmanship. So that's what's going on there. Now back to the scope. Why should you limit the technology on a scope? Kind of a similar thing. It mostly has to do with the ethics of the hunt. When does the hunt really turn into more of a killing event, a harvest, more than a traditional hunt in which you want to concentrate on being a hunter rather than a technician? You think about it, we have tools today that would enable us to get our venison without all of the whatever we're doing with boots and saddles and packs on our backs and getting out in the field and finding the game. We can just send a drone up to get it. If you're taking the hunt out of the hunt, that's the issue. And that's where they're starting to draw lines on this stuff. Years and years ago when we began establishing rules for what a hunter should be or what sportsmanship was, essentially we made hunting into something like a game, a baseball game or a football game. By that I mean it's not frivolous. We don't just go hunting because, hey, let's just have some fun throwing a ball around or shooting some animals. No, it's not about that. It is about boundaries and limitations on how we shoot those animals. We're no longer depending on getting a deer every week to feed our family. We might get 1 to 5 deer a year to feed our family, put them in the freezer, and we've got plenty of food. But mostly we want to get outdoors, reconnect with nature, become hunters, integral parts of nature, playing our role in it. And then we will set limits on technology because it makes it too easy to get our game. Our hunt lasts for 5 minutes if you've got high technology. If you're going out with a handmade bow and stone points, you may have to hunt for weeks on end to get your deer. But if you use a high-powered rifle with a high-powered scope, and then the scope is digital, so it automatically zooms right into the perfect distance and the right hold, and all you have to do is pull the trigger, you've just layered too much technology between you and the experience of being a hunter. We can argue about this stuff endlessly. For some people, they would say, I am cheating because I use a bolt-action rifle with a scope. And that makes it too easy. I can kill my deer pretty reliably out to 300, maybe 400 yards. Well, the next person says, well, you're using a bigger scope than Ron, and it has electronics in it and a computer that figures out the distance, a laser rangefinder, and adjusts the scope's reticle to be perfectly on at 600, 800 yards. Suddenly, that person no longer has to hunt as hard. He doesn't have to be involved with nature. He can sit up on a hillside, wait till something steps out at 800 yards, and kill it. End of the hunt. Does that really matter? If the biologists are setting the seasons and the bag limits, so what? As long as you're protecting the resource, whose business is it to say how you should take that deer? That is an argument we can have and always do, probably will always be there. But as a general rule, I think what we're trying to do as a hunting community is to retain some of the woodsmanship, the field craft, the Daniel Boone part of being a hunter, because that's what puts us back in touch with nature. And I don't know about you guys, but I have analyzed quite often, quite deeply, why I hunt. And at the heart of it, it's this desire to make a connection with what I call the real world, because it is, before all of these layers of technology came between us and nature. That's what I'm looking for. So I strike a balance with my bolt-action rifles and scopes, but I don't go too far in one way or the other. So each of us has to make up our own minds on these. But I understand why state fish and game agencies set these regulations. You can't shoot deer out of a helicopter. You can't shoot deer with super technology in a scope, however they decide.
I have a comment on that.
Sure.
Because I like the red dot.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call that? The
illuminated reticle?
The illuminated reticle, because of my eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And once again, it brings up the issue of where do you draw the line? And some states will determine that it's just too much of an advantage. And then you'll say, well, I'm a little bit handicapped with my vision, so why should I have to suffer?
What I could do is get closer, and then it wouldn't be as much of an issue.
Yeah.
So maybe it's my lack of hunting skills.
Well, but you could say the same for me using a regular scope with an unilluminated reticle. My eyes are good enough yet that I can easily put that crosshair where it belongs. But what about someone who, let's say, is can't hike, can't climb mountains? Should he be denied the right to go sheep hunting, or should he be allowed to use some sort of a mechanical device to help him get up the mountain? Maybe he can take a helicopter ride and they can drop him up there where the sheep live or something. Is that too much of an advantage? Should we make exceptions for that? And in my experience, many states, or not, maybe most states, do this. They'll say, well, if you're in a chair, a wheelless chair, you're not ambulatory, you are allowed to go out with a wheelchair powered device. Some of them will make exceptions for folks who don't have the manual dexterity or even the appendages with which to draw a bow, and they let them use some other device that would draw that bow for them, a mechanical one. All sorts of exceptions in using technology that I think are reasonable. But these are all good points that we can argue, discuss, evaluate. The point, I think, is, number one, manage the resource, the biology, the wildlife resource. Let's not abuse that. The idea is to keep as much of it as we can, improve the numbers and all that good stuff. Then how do we enjoy this experience without making it too much of an unfair advantage? Lots of areas to cover on all that stuff, but this is why these topics like this, high technology scopes like this Burris that Tate covered, are so incendiary, shall we say. People get really worked up about this. Okay. Well, let's move on here. Let's see what we've got. Oh my gosh, here's some more on high-tech scopes. This is from Zeven. If you really want to be blown away by scope technology, you need to see the new Vortex scopes on the M7277 rifles. Integrated laser rangefinder. An actual mini ballistics computer lasers the target, and the scope itself gives you a live reticle impact point. You put the dot on the target and hit. It's just like a video game. It has a heads-up display inside of the scope like a fighter pilot uses, and another squad mates lays the target. You can see their target marks. It's incredible. The M7 rifle, on the other hand, but the scope tech, now that's a winner. See,
They're teaching people to be snipers.
Well, and what's wrong with being a sniper? I mean, that's part of being a good shot. Where do you define sniper versus shooter? You want an inaccurate shooter?
Sniper versus hunter.
And what?
Sniper versus hunter.
Yeah, and then that's where that gray area comes in. I'm talking about the Daniel Boone Fieldcraft hunter, stalking game, getting close. And then we're talking about the guy who's sitting on the hillside shooting out 1,200 yards with all the laser scopes and all the rest of it. Where do you draw the line?
I think it's up to the manufacturers, to podcasters, people like you, to emphasize the skill of being a hunter.
Yeah, that's probably true. I think it's up to the individual hunter to draw his or her line within the legal requirements of the jurisdiction in which you're hunting. In other words, if your state allows you to use an illuminated reticle on a scope with a computer in it and all the rest of it, and you feel comfortable doing it, okay, go for it. But I do think as a community, as hunters, I think we do really need to stay hold of our roots. They've often said that when you do surveys of people, do you like hunting or not? Are hunters evil or not, and all the rest of it, the closer their perception of a hunter as being sort of a Daniel Boone or a Native American Ishi, that famous Indian in California who was such a great close-range stalker that even though he wasn't a great bow shot, he was able to get so close to game that he could bag it. People respect that. That's a real hunter. How you define it, I don't know, but the closer you are to the primitive style of stalker, tracker, get close to game, know the woods, know how to read the winds, all the other things that put you in touch with nature, more of a natural person, a natural hunter, rather than a high technology, I'm taking advantage of science to take my animals, and I really don't know that much about being a hunter. There's where the issue comes in. So, hey guys, weigh in on this one. We'll discuss it some more, but I do think that we need to all strike some kind of a balance. So, there you go. Now, let's move on to this a little more ballistics and gun stuff that everybody loves to hear about. This is concerning lightweight rifles from Jason Fishing again. Jason says, I take issue with two things. First, you do not have to shoot long range for pronghorns. You can lure them in with a roll of toilet paper, for goodness sake. By that, he means it's the old tactic of appealing to their curiosity. They always said that way back when Lewis and Clark were first coming across, the Native Americans in the Dakotas showed them that if they took a whitish cloth, I suppose for them it would have been a hide of a deer, the inside of it, or something tanned. But if you got in brush and you waved that at a pronghorn, he would get curious and come closer until you could get them within bow range. And I've seen this, and I've done this myself. It certainly works. So that's what Jason is referring to here. But he says also, I know of guys who spend thousands of dollars shaving ounces off of rifle weight. They say that carrying 2 to 3 pounds of rifle extra weight isn't really a big deal, but I always buy the absolute lightest rifles and shotguns and bows and fly rods and everything else that I can afford, because lighter always wins in my experience, and I don't sit and shoot off of a bench anymore. So there's your vote for lightweight rifles. And I think Jason may have been a little bit influenced by some of the things I've said about light rifles, because I have been using lightweight rifles since 1986. I got my first lightweight. I had at the time a 10-pound Ruger M77 that I was really getting worn down with carrying up in the Elk Mountains. I was young and tough and all the rest of it, but I still noticed that I got more tired carrying that around than I did my recurve hunting bow, which were wonderfully light and a delight to carry in the woods. So I got myself a featherweight Model 70 Winchester that weighed closer to 6.5, 7 pounds. And that was just a delight to handle that. Just quick handling, it felt lively, and it just seemed like it had a little more energy at the end of the day. Then shortly after that, I came on a really lightweight rifle, and that was the original Ultralight Arms Model 20 in a 284 Winchester, and that thing weighed just under 5 pounds before I put a scope on it. I put some 1.5 ounce per ring from Tally aluminum rings, and I think it was a 2.5 to 8 by 36 Leupold VX3 scope on it. That thing weighed about 11 or 12 ounces. Whole thing ready to go, under 6 pounds. Oh my goodness. That became my mountain hunting rifle, and it was so accurate and so effective that it became my whitetail rifle and my mule deer rifle out on the flats and the plains. It just plain worked. So I have been a fan of lightweight rifles ever since. So Jason, you and I are on the same page. Let's see what Woodrow Call has to say. Hey, maybe there is another explanation, but I am noticing disproportionate numbers of wounded and lost game animals from hunters shooting high BC bullets. And by high BC, he puts down .550 to .650 bullets. Those are pretty high BCs. I had been writing it off as a shot placement issue, but after more review, I'm seeing some shots that look good but have poor terminal effect, often with pass-throughs. And then he gets a response from Lindsay, who says, very true, I have seen this phenomenon myself. The long, heavy, high BC bullets go through game like a laser beam. They do not deform, expand, or tumble. I have heard it said that they perform like a field point arrow. Well, guys, I've heard all that too, but what is your proof? One of the points I always raise on these things is if the animal was hit and it ran off, and you say, well, the bullet didn't expand or it didn't tumble, how do you know? You don't have the animal to examine. Obviously, something didn't work right, but from your perspective, it might have looked like a perfect shot, but perhaps it wasn't. I've seen this many times myself. I make a shot and I say, boy, that was right in the boiler room. Should be here. And turns out when I recover the animal, that shot was actually behind the diaphragm, back in the belly. So you don't always see what you think you see. So don't jump to conclusions. Now, should a long high BC bullet not be able to expand? Should it really zip right through an animal like a laser beam? Not if it's made of the right materials. I have found that sharply pointed bullets can expand as well as, sometimes even better than, round nose or flat bullets. Depends on the medium. How soft is the lead? Is there any lead? How thick is the jacket? Is the jacket skived? Is it an all copper bullet? Does the nose expand reliably and quickly? I've seen that in most cases those do. And you get incredible expansion reliably, even though the bullet is high ballistics coefficient. So a long, sleek, pointed bullet does not, because of that shape, because of that high ballistics coefficient rating, then become ineffective on game. It has more to do with the construction of the bullet, the type of bullet. And because it is a high BC bullet, remember, it is going to retain more energy at all distances than more bluntly shaped bullets. So it should have more energy, which means more expansion, because expansion happens because of the transitioning of velocity and mass into an object distorts both the object and the bullet that's hitting the object. So it's just everything indicates that those bullets can do the job. It's more about the construction. So if you disagree and have good evidence to support your argument, we'd love to hear about it. Send it in and we will read it next time. Now let's jump to something on the 8.6 Blackout. We recently did a video in which I tested a Q fix bolt action rifle that was chambered for the 8.6 Blackout. And boy, I got patted on the back and slapped upside the head for this one. Depends on whether these people liked it or didn't like it, I don't know, but let's hear from some of them. This is Chick M14. And he says, "This gun rag writer is a joke." Mr. Funny here. "This caliber is a joke. 2,400 feet per second with 840 foot-pounds of energy. Compare that to the 30-30 with 2,400 foot-pounds and 1,902 foot-pounds of energy. And that's with a 150 grain bullet. Anyone who would promote this junk should be banned from writing." So here we go. Chick is ready to throw out the First Amendment. You no longer have the right if you don't agree with me. Oh, God. Yeah, there's so much to unpack here, Chick. I would mention that broadhead arrows carry less than 100 foot-pounds of energy, but they've been known to take deer, elk, moose, big bears, and even elephants. So I don't think the energy argument is going to win you one there, buddy. No, you need to, I think, expand your horizons, open your mind a little bit here, and understand things like momentum, bullet mass, and what actually terminates an animal. It's not just energy. You can pour all kinds of energy into anything, but if you don't have a mechanism to make that energy turn into work, you've got to tear the tissue, cause hemorrhaging to get the animal. So pure energy is not going to do it for you. And it's been proven many, many times that a little bit of energy with the right projectile in the right place is more than sufficient and can handle it. And I think you, I, and anyone else who has an opinion in the US of A should be able to express that opinion. So thanks for writing in and expressing yours. I'm agreeing to not agree with you. Now, how about Fighting Bear? He's going to be a little nicer to me. I hope so. Fighting Bear says, "Those slow, heavy bullets are old school." Lots of laughs. Yeah, that's a good point. Back in the 1900s, everybody was shooting big, heavy, slow bullets because you couldn't really push them fast with black powder. It wasn't until smokeless powder came along that we could get our velocities up. So everyone then was, well, not everyone, but a lot of people then were saying, "Oh, these new high velocity bullets aren't good enough. They're not heavy enough. You can't be shooting a 150 grain bullet. You've got to have at least a 300 grain bullet from a 45-70, if not the 405 grain version, et cetera, et cetera." Yeah, this is just part of human nature. What works, what's worked for you in the past, you're a little reluctant to try something new. But over the years, people have realized that you can offset lighter bullet weight by having higher velocity, and then it becomes a construction issue on the bullet to make it all work. Good point there, Fighting Bear. Here is It's Mimi. It's Mimi says, without the twist, it loses accuracy. It will shoot off to the left or right. The accuracy is in the spin. Well, Mimi, you're kind of on it here, but not quite. The spin stabilizes a bullet, just like a top. Take a top, a kid's toy top, spin it really fast, and it stands up on its little point and just keeps spinning away. Stable. When it slows down, it starts to wobble, and then it falls and spins around on the table. It's failed. So spinning makes the bullet remain stable. It doesn't make it shoot left or right. If it starts to wobble, what you'll see on the target is the bullet landing sideways or oblong. You'll see oblong holes in your target. That's a good way to detect whether or not your bullet is stable. So if you're seeing a nice, clean, round hole, you've got stability in your bullet. But an unstable bullet doesn't mean it's necessarily going to shoot to the left or the right or further up or further down. It is going to lose more energy because if it is spinning at its nose, when it makes that circle, that precession, or up and down and around and all this stuff, it is exposing more of its side, more of its surface to air drag, so it slows down. And that also kind of helps it become less stable because it's getting pushed around more. But the base usually remains consistently spinning. It's the nose that starts to wobble like this. So you're on the right track. Just keep studying on this stuff. It takes a lot of study to get all this stuff figured out because you shoot a bullet, it's pretty hard to see what it's doing. You've got to really look at some films and discussions and stuff, get it all figured out. I'm still learning stuff about ballistics, guys. Much as I've studied over the years, there's every once in a while something pops up where I go, oh, I didn't know that. Good to learn it. Let's see what Roddy62 has to say. Say, with that twist rate, the bullet is rotating 240,000 revolutions per minute. That is incredible. I'm surprised that the bullet doesn't explode from rotational force, centrifugal force, I think. I wonder what RPM is required for a bullet to lose cohesion and come apart. Anyone know? Well, Roddy, I don't know absolutely, but of course it would depend on the bullet's construction. If you have a pure lead, soft lead core, and then a really thin gilding metal jacket around that, well then spinning it too much can result in that blowing it apart centrifugal force kind of thing you're talking about. But if it's a thicker jacketed bullet with a harder lead core, that's probably not going to happen at the same RPMs. And if it's an all copper monolithic bullet, there's nothing to come apart. So it wouldn't be coming apart at all. But it's a lot more than 240,000 RPM. If you take, say, a 22 Creedmoor, which is the equivalent of a 22-250 Ackley improved, shoot a 70 grain bullet around 3,400 feet per second, in a 1-in-8 twist barrel, you're going to have around 300,000 to 310,000 revolutions per minute on that bullet. I have done that, and I've shot some 40 grain bullets or 42 grain bullets, hollow points, old style varmint bullets with thin jacketed, and I got a 10-shot group in an inch. They were all consistent. That is a 100-yard target, 10 shots inside of an inch with a 22-250 Ackley improved, shooting that little 40, 42 grain hollow point bullet. Did not twist it apart. And that thing was a 1-in-8 inch twist, so you was probably doing 300,000 RPMs. So there you go. But I'm sure at some point you'd get twist fast enough that would have ripped that one apart. All right. Let's see. Ren Ripari. I feel that there's too much twist in the barrel. The rifling would get damaged quickly, and the bullet would be damaged too. Oh, that was with the 8.6 groups that I was shooting with these 300 grain bullets. And the twist rate on that rifle was 1 in 3 inches. Most rifles are 1 in 9, 1 in 10, 1 in 12. The newer ones are twisting it a lot faster to stabilize these long bullets. And the 8.6 Blackout is really twisted fast because they want that to shoot 300 to 350 grain bullets subsonic, slow. And the speed of the bullet affects the RPMs too. So they really want to crank that spin rate up. All right, here's the last one. I hope you had a great feeling killing that animal. So this is one that I got a response on a Facebook post I did of a buffalo, an old bull Cape buffalo in Africa that I took, and it had a big, massive horn on its head, the boss, that big covering, and it was really wide and big, and I was just commenting on how massive that thing was. And of course, I'm standing by a dead animal. The anti-hunters are going to weigh in on this one, and this guy did. And he said, I bet you had a great feeling killing that animal. And then I wrote back and I said, yeah, not as good a feeling as the hundreds of local villagers enjoyed as they ate that buffalo. And then he comes back at me again and says, you psychopaths love that excuse. You never answer the question. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question. And I did. I wrote him back and I said, why do one's feelings matter? Nature, that functioning cycle of life, death, and renewal, does not pivot on feelings. Do we ask lions how they feel when they gang jump a buffalo and slowly tear it down? Do we ask a coyote how it feels when it snatches a fawn from its mother and carries it away alive and screaming? When hunting, I feel alive. I feel fully involved as an integral part of nature. I feel privileged to still be doing what nature and God designed me to do as a cog in the wheel of life. I feel satisfaction in finding, stalking, and killing my meat without alerting, frightening, harrying, and mauling my prey into a long and protracted death. I feel responsible and competent. And I feel proud for creating the demand for saving, restoring, protecting, and enhancing the wild natural habitats in which the wildlife I love and hunt and eat lives. Converting wild lands into monoculture rice, corn, and soybean fields that are annually plowed and sprayed and stripped of all life except for that single crop, that does not maintain the panoply of bacteria and insects and arachnids and forbs and grasses and songbirds and amphibians, reptiles, shrubs, mice, songbirds, gallinaceous birds, wading birds, raptors, rabbits, weasels, foxes, minks, badgers, vultures, antelope, elephants, and the hundreds of other wild species that continue to live and eat and hunt and procreate and sustain the rich biotic community of which human hunters can and should be an integral part. Rejecting this reality in favor of a false feeling of moral superiority because you prefer that our biosphere be stripped and converted to man-engineered crops and domesticated meat animals is willful ignorance. How does it make you feel knowing that your demand for domesticated foods results in the destruction of biodiversity?
Boy. Wow, Ron. I love that.
Did I go off that time, huh?
Did he respond?
Oh, I haven't heard back from him yet. But this is the point. These people get on their moral high horse without thinking, wait a minute. If you demand that you don't use what nature provides, that means you have to get rid of nature and make something man-made. And crop fields these days don't have much life on them. Some farmer doesn't want all these animals in his field eating his corn or his soybeans. So it gets, like I said, you plow the ground and you've lost all the basis for a rich biotic community. So if you want to talk about biodiversity loss and all the rest of it, if you maintain that natural habitat with wildlife in it and you utilize what nature provides, the deer, the pheasants, the rabbits, or whatever, sustainably, you will then keep all of the wildlife, including the little things we hardly even notice, as well as the big stuff that we use, in perpetuity. That's the way the globe has been ever since man opened his eyes and said, wow, look at all this wonderful stuff nature gives us. Continues to do that. You just have to use it smartly and sustainably. Okay, now we're going to quit the sermon and see what Betsy has gotten for us to be insulted by. Are you going to insult us this time, honey?
No, they were really good questions.
Good questions. All right. Well, one of them is from Jason in Arkansas. Hello, I recently found your YouTube channel, and I've really enjoyed the wealth of knowledge that you share. Well, thank you, Jason. I have a question. My dad is elderly, not in the best of health. He mentioned that he would love to do one more whitetail deer hunt before he can no longer entertain the idea. He has mostly hunted with a Remington semi-auto 30-06, but he fears not being able to shoulder the recoil due to his health. Could you recommend a good rifle and cartridge that I could get him? I was looking into the 300 Blackout and a 6.5 Creedmoor from the articles I've read about light recoil. I cannot imagine him taking a shot any further than 200 to 300 yards at most. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, Jason, you're right on it. The 6.5 Creedmoor would be great. Hardly any recoil and easily reach out to 300 yards with a good bullet on a whitetail. Not a problem. I would recommend that one over the 300 Blackout because the Blackout is quite a bit slower. You're going to have more drop. You're not going to have the range. Neither one of them has much for recoil, so there you go. Now, another way to tame recoil for your pops is to consider putting a suppressor out front. Boy, Betsy and I are really loving these suppressors. We don't like the look of them, but once you start shooting one and you notice your ears are not ringing and your shoulder's not getting pounded, you can even see your hits. I mean, you go bang and you're still in the scope and you can see the target get hit or missed. It's really quite wonderful. So you might want to consider that. Some states don't allow them yet, but the majority now do allow suppressors for hunting. So it's getting a lot easier to get those suppressors and use those. But yeah, your 6.5 Creedmoor is a great idea. Now, in Oklahoma, we're hearing from Stephen. First, Mr. Spomer, if being an old geezer means being like you, then I know the title to aspire to. Yeah, in one of my short videos, I talked about an old gun, some old cartridges, and the old geezer shooting it, and it still all worked. And a lot of people were kind enough to write in and say that I'm not an old geezer. I'm just on the threshold. So what else do you have here, Stefan? Secondly, I have a thought regarding effectiveness of different cartridges on game and why different animal run off. Seems uncorrelated to any detail on the weight and the speed and the energy. So as an EMS provider, honey, that's a what? Emergency medical services?
Yes.
Like an EMT?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paramedic.
Okay, as a paramedic, I have a level of experience with anatomy and physiology. Oh, this should be good. When a heart stops beating, there are several seconds before the brain shuts down due to the oxygen and sugar already in the blood present in the brain, as well as the brain cells themselves. This is normally anywhere from 5 to 15 seconds, but I have seen it last up to 27 seconds. Many variables contribute to this overall patient health, level of adrenaline, etc., but this is a general idea. This could explain why an animal shot in the heart can run for several seconds. The blood pressure can drop to zero instantly, but there is still stores in the brain. It doesn't matter if you blow the heart and lungs out, the exit wound, there are still small resources already present in the brain, allowing it to continue to run. Bingo. Yeah, Stefan, I've been saying that for a long time. I probably had it a little bit wrong. I've always said that when the blood pressure drops, it's like fainting. You get dizzy from low blood pressure and you faint. You're not brain dead yet, but that's what I've been saying. But you get what you're saying, that you can drop that blood pressure instantly with a dramatic shot to the heart, but still there's enough resources left in the brain that it continues to function for, as you said, upwards of 27 seconds. And that explains exactly why these animals get heart shot and they just take off running, quite often as if they weren't even touched. I've even had them stand as if I hadn't even shot them. And I go, what? How could I have missed? And then after several seconds, they start to get a little bit woozy, and then they wobble and fall over. So you've got to expect everything and anything when you shoot game. Too many hunters think if they get a bigger hammer, a bigger bullet, a faster bullet, a heavier bullet, they're going to kill them, knock them right down. And of course, the manufacturers, they bank on that. They're always advertising a certain cartridge or bullet or load that they make that has incredible knockdown power. And that's just giving you false hope, guys. Don't expect knockdown power to make up for good shot placement. Don't expect it to even work. Sometimes it does knock them right down, but most of the time, stuff takes off running. You've got to learn to be a tracker. That's part of being a hunter. Great. Good points, Stefan. I really appreciate that. Now in Nebraska, we hear from Jed. Say, Ron, I have a Winchester Model 70 Ultimate Shadow 7mm Remington Magnum. I have tinkered on it a bit, and I added a Timney trigger. That's a good one. A Bell & Carson stock. I've had those. Those are good. And I've shortened the barrel to 24 inches, and I added a muzzle brake. I have an elk hunt planned for this fall, and I need a good factory-loaded bullet that my rifle likes. It now shoots a 168 grain Berger VLD loaded by HSM very well. Also the Federal Berger 168 grain hybrid hunter, but it doesn't like the Hornady 162 grain ELDX or the 162 SST or the 165 Norma Bond Strike. That one shoots 3 inches or worse than 100 yards. Yeah, you don't want to use that one. So what is it about the Bergers that make them accurate out of the similar bullets that aren't? And what factory-loaded bullet for elk would you recommend? Thanks for your recommendations. Well, I can't say exactly why the Bergers are so accurate other than the entire line was inspired and built by Walt Berger, who was a competition bench rest shooter of extraordinary ability, won all kinds of stuff. He passed not too many years ago, but he had quite the legacy that he left behind. And you see that in that company. They make bullets based on the technology that won him all those bench rest competitions and such. So that's probably part of what's going on. But it just might be that your rifle likes that particular bullet. Most of us will say, hey, my rifle likes the Norma Bond Strike or any of the other ones you mentioned. So it's always an individual thing with rifles and bullets. You just need to keep playing around with them. But before you do that, I think what you want to consider is what kind of a bullet is going to be most effective on elk. And that can vary quite a bit too based on how you apply that bullet to the animal. A broadside shot on an elk, right tight behind the shoulder, really is no different than one on a whitetail, even a small whitetail. That means all the bullet really needs is enough integrity to punch through the hide and a little bit of rib muscle reaching the lungs and the heart. And bingo, you've got your animal. So a fairly traditional bullet, a cup and core that could break up if it hit major muscle mass, will do fine that way. And that's pretty much what these Bergers are. Lead core, relatively thin jacket, and it's going to potentially explode. I've had that happen when I used them on an animal where I did hit the shoulder. So be aware of that. If you're going to be taking angled shots, trying to get through a little bit more material, or you might have to take a running shot and hit a major bone, you're going to want a more controlled expansion bullet. Harder lead core, thicker jacket, all copper jacket, or an all copper bullet. So something like the terminal ascent bullets from Federal or trophy bonded, bear claw types, Swift A-frames, or the bonded bullets like a Swift Sirocco. Hornady, I think, still has their inner bond. Most bullet manufacturers have some kind of a bonded bullet as well as the monolithic bullets. Lots of those out there. So try those and see how they work for you. And those should work well on elk from any angle. All right, now, Mike in Tennessee says, I'm the guy who has killed a deer with over 100 different calibers of rifles. I was just wondering what happened to the podcast you were going to do for some time now. No one has ever gotten back to me. I'm sorry, Mike. I thought we had covered that one time, but maybe I've mistaken.
We did is we wanted to interview him, and we never got back to him.
Oh, that's right. We were going to ask him all about that. That is a good idea. We just kind of put that on the back burner, and then the gas ran out. The fire went out.
Well, the other thing is we have to set up Riverside, and we haven't done that to do it remote.
All right, Mike, thanks for reminding me. We are going to get, Betsy, write this down so we don't forget. I'm going to write it down right here. Mike Tolley, 100 deer. Oh, this really should be interesting, guys. Mike is living in one of these southeast areas where they've got more deer than mosquitoes, and he's then able to shoot a lot of them. I don't know what the limit is there at deer a day. Some places I hear you can shoot 5 a day. At any rate, he's shooting a lot of deer, and because he has to control the deer numbers there, he says, well, why not try different cartridges, different rifles? And so he set himself a goal to try to take a deer with all these different rifles, and he's used more than 100 different cartridges to take deer. And I think it would be fascinating to just visit with him a little bit and find out which ones that he used and if there were any major differences amongst those. So that'll be fun. We're going to try to get a hold of you, Mike. So thanks for reminding me on that one. Kendall from South Dakota. Ron, I just picked up my new 7mm backcountry. I went to the low end price-wise with a Savage 110 Trail Hunter Light with a 16.5-inch barrel. But the cost will go up significantly because soon as the ATF approves my suppressor purchase, I'm going to get that one. So I'm just looking for a little bullet advice. I like the idea of a copper bullet that retains weight, not leaving a lead trail through the wound channel. They offer a Barnes 168 grain. I have never shot copper, and you have me a little concerned. You said lead fouling can throw off the accuracy of a copper bullet. Should a person always try multiple cartridges in a new rifle? Or if I am happy with the grouping and the accuracy of the first one out of the gate, should I go with that? The cost per box leaves this old 270 shooter with a little sticker shock. I have never shot a deer beyond 300 yards. I've never shot anything but prairie dogs past 400 yards. But I haven't had a rig like this. It's supposed to be effective at long range. I have a South Dakota prairie cow elk tag for this fall. Which of the 5 loads offered would you lean towards? The Barnes LRX 168, the Berger Elite 195, the Fusion Tip 175, or the Terminal Ascent 155, or 170, or maybe the high BC of the heavy Berger Elite is what I need in the South Dakota wind. Heck, maybe I need to try them all. Thank goodness there are only 5. Thank you, sir. Pooh, man, you're even getting me confused here now, Kendall. You might be overthinking this a bit, but I get it. You've got limited selection. They're all federal loads for this new cartridge. It's a great cartridge with a lot of promise, and you're able to get incredible velocity, which means you can use that light, short barrel, put a suppressor on it. I like all that stuff. I would lean first towards testing that Barnes LRX 168. I've really had great luck with the Barnes bullets over the years, so I like that one. It's going to work whether you get a broadside shot behind the shoulder or on the shoulder or a quartering shot or a frontal shot or whatever. It's going to work. It's not going to have the highest BC for that wind issue you brought up. But having grown up in South Dakota and put up with the wind for too many years, I know what you're up against there. So it probably is smart to err on the side of better wind resistance in your bullets than flat trajectory. So that suggests the Berger Elite 195, but then you're looking at a more traditional cup and core bullet with all those issues we've already covered. Now, the Terminal Ascent in a 170 might be your baby. That thing is fairly similar in terminal performance to the LRX Barnes bullet. It's a controlled expansion that's going to really do the job for you. A little bit of lead in there, so I think you make your decision based on that. Those are the 2 I would look at first. And the 170 grain Terminal Ascent is probably your best bet behind the Berger Elite for that wind issue. So yeah, start with that one, and then if it's just not accurate enough for you, try that Barnes, and I think you'll do well. Good luck on that hunt, buddy. Now, Cody in Arkansas. Oh, I want to say one more thing about this Kendall, South Dakota elk hunt. He is elk hunting on the prairies where there were no elk when I was a kid. There were no elk in the prairies of South Dakota after settlement, and they farmed it and ranched it and all. There weren't any elk there until probably the 1990s or maybe even the 2000s when they started filtering in. Came out of the Black Hills forests, following the rivers, White River, Cheyenne River, Belle Fourche River, and all the rest of these, and they all drain towards the Missouri River in the middle of the state, and there's a lot of trees have grown up in those river valleys now that the prairie fires have been controlled. And along the Missouri bluffs themselves, what used to be little shrubs sprouting up when I was a kid are now forests. So you've got great elk habitat, and that's an exciting development to have elk back in the prairie states of South Dakota. Now, Arkansas, Cody. I was going through some of my grandpa's old firearms and ammunition, and I came across a curious cartridge. It's a 30-06 Springfield Accelerator, a 55-grain bullet that has a sabot around it. Never heard of them, just wondering what you knew about it. Thanks. Cody, those were quite the thing back in the day. I don't remember exactly when they started doing that, but it's basically, like you said, it's a sabot, a nylon sleeve that's 30 caliber. inside of that sleeve is placed a 22 caliber bullet, 55 grains. Well, that means you've got the base surface area of a 30 to take the power from the pressures from burning gunpowder and accelerate that lightweight little bullet to velocities you'll never get with a full diameter bullet, even if it weighed 100 grains out of a 30-06, for instance. So you get incredible velocity over 4,000 feet per second. I think it was like 4,200 or something. And, wow, sounds great, except nobody's ever reported really good accuracy. It might be good enough for some things, maybe deer, but the idea was to turn your 30-06 into a varmint rifle or a coyote rifle or something, and that usually calls for precision. And I have yet to hear from someone who shot those that got that kind of precision. You're usually saying, well, I got 2-inch groups at 100 yards. That's not going to cut it. But maybe in your rifle it will. So play around with it and see what you think. But that's what's going on. Lars in Denmark. Ron, first of all, a big thank you for all of the inspiration you bring to me and the great work you're doing. Well, thank you, Lars. I'm more than happy to do that. Your podcast is a good partner when driving, and it's giving me food for thought. I am located in Denmark where the regulations for gun owners are rather strict. Imagine having to wait 3 months from applying for a rifle permit before getting the actual permit. I don't want to imagine that. My question to you is, what experience and thoughts can you share about the calibers called the 6XC? In Denmark, we are using only lead-free ammunition. We have the possibility to use as small as a 6mm caliber to hunt red stag as our largest game animal in Denmark. So what do you think of this combination? Should probably mention that the red deer is bigger than the Highland red deer of Scotland, so they're up to around 200 kilograms for a decent red stag. Could be the challenge. Anyway, the question is, thumbhole stock, is this a go or no-go? And I look forward to hearing your input, enjoying several episodes to come from you and Betsy. Best wishes on Honest and Shoot Straight. Lars, thanks, appreciate that. As for the thumbhole stock, yeah, personal preference. I have never loved them for hunting. They give you a little more lateral control with that hole through the stock for your thumb, but then they're not as quick handling. When you have to pull your thumb out of that hole to reach up and push your safety off, for instance, little things like that, I don't think it's ideal for hunting, but if you're not worried about speed and all, it can give you a little bit better lateral stability and control for accuracy. Now, as far as the bullets in that XC, I have my friend Daryl Holland is real high on that 6XC cartridge. I have never fooled around with it. But to me, it's a 243 Winchester, 6mm Remington. That power range is probably designed to be a little more precisely accurate for precision shooting on targets and whatnot. So it should work fine. Anything that 6mm Remington can do with the 243 Winchester, it can do. And I know those cartridges are a little bit small for elk. Red deer are smaller than elk, but you're probably looking at a big mule deer, a really heavy mule deer, or maybe a caribou in size. And I know those bullets in that particular cartridge can do the job. Just use the right bullet and put it in the right place is really all it amounts to. That's the best information I can give you. Any 6mm XC shooters out there have good information on that thing. Why do you think it's superior to the 243 Winchester or the old 6mm Remington? Let me know, because as I say, I haven't worked with it. But I don't think it offers a heck of a lot more than those do as far as velocity and bullet weights and stuff. Lee in Louisiana. Hi, Ron. I am a longtime listener. Your podcasts are great companions during my long commutes. So thanks for the knowledge and entertainment. Well, you're most welcome, Lee. I am currently preparing for both an antelope and an elk hunt. While I've always been a diehard fan of the 277 calibers, I decided to jump on the high BC bandwagon, so I picked up a 7mm PRC. Now, before you say any of my trusty 277s are more than sufficient, which I already know, I'll remind you that a good excuse to buy a new rifle should never go to waste, especially with plans to get into long-range target shooting. Okay, you're off the hook, buddy. I'm with you. I took the new rifle to the range, and I was very impressed. After sighting it in, I shot 2 sub-minute of angle 5-shot groups at 100 yards. That said, I've run into what seems to be the well-known Hornady powder charge issue. Using Precision Hunter 175 grain ELDX, I averaged 2,751 feet per second, more than 20 rounds, with a high of 2,779, a low of 2,740. As you know, this falls significantly short of the advertised 3,000 feet per second, which is disappointing given that I selected the 7 PRC to fully capitalize on those high BC bullets. While I typically hand load, I want to start with factory ammo. Do you have a recommendation for a factory load that performs closer to the 3,000 foot per second mark? Thanks for your time. Keep up the great work. You've got a loyal fan here. Lee. Yeah, Lee, we've covered this extensively in our videos and podcasts. And many people said the federal PRC loads are closer to that 3,000. So one day we tested them against the latest stuff from Hornady. And the Hornady was actually faster than the federal in our rifle. So, that particular lot, I don't know. We've tried old lots of Hornady PRC. We've tried the new lots. And the new lots were about 100 feet per second faster than the old ones. But then all the people who said they measured the velocity of the federal loads, and they were always higher. Then when we did it, it was lower. So, who knows? I wouldn't get too worked up about it because 100 feet per second velocity one way or the other is not going to make a huge difference if you've got a laser rangefinder and you know your trajectory curve. There's going to be more than enough energy in that bullet to do what you need to do. What you're gaining with that PRC are those long bullets with the high BCs. That's going to help you shoot a little bit flatter, retain more energy downrange, regardless of what it starts with. It just hangs onto it better, and then minimizing your wind deflection. That's the reason I would shoot a 7 PRC rather than, say, a 7 Rem mag, because you've got the ability to stabilize those 180 grain bullets with really high BCs. But if you do want to be 3,000 feet per second, you're going to have to load your own or snoop around and figure something out because it's just not working out. As I understand it, when they designed this thing, they had a powder, and they say it was Reloader 26, which nobody can get anymore unless something just popped up, and that's why they're not loading it to the initial velocities. They tried a bunch of other powders, reportedly, and found out that the one that gives the kinds of velocities you're seeing here is the most consistently accurate, so they decided to go with better accuracy rather than the highest possible muzzle velocity. Best I can tell you, partner, so good luck. I don't think you're going to be too disappointed. Just know your trajectories and, I don't know, I hate to say live with it because it's still a great option. All right, that looks like the end of them, honey. Ms. Betsy, do you have anything to add to the troops here?
No.
Nothing. Man, that makes it short and sweet.
I think that was really good.
You what?
Hey, you did a good job.
Oh, I did a good job.
Yeah.
It's my lucky day.
I didn't fall asleep.
You didn't fall asleep. There you go, folks. If Betsy stays awake, this suggests I did an okay job.